You don't lose her because you weren't good enough. You lose her because you gave too much too soon, with no lines drawn. And somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing you as solid ground and started seeing you as soft clay, the kind she can press into, reshape, step on without resistance. And the dangerous part? She doesn't even do it consciously. It just happens. Because attraction doesn't live in what you say, it lives in what you allow. If that sentence stings a little, good. That means you're listening. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked, the place where we don't sugarcoat desire, we decode it. If you want clarity instead of confusion, power instead of overthinking, subscribe now. You're exactly where you need to be. Now listen closely. Early on, when everything feels electric, when she laughs a little louder and your phone feels warmer in your hand, this is the moment most men fail. Not because they're weak, but because they're afraid of losing her. So they overextend. They cancel plans. They reply instantly. They explain themselves when no explanation was asked for. They bend before pressure even appears. And slowly, invisibly, the dynamic tilts. The first boundary you must set is around your time. Your time isn't just hours on a clock, it's proof of self-respect. When you drop everything the moment she calls, you're not showing devotion. You're signaling emptiness. You're telling her, without words, my life pauses for you. And here's the dark truth of attraction. What has no cost is rarely valued. She doesn't feel safer when you're always available. She feels heavier, like she's carrying you instead of walking beside you. You don't need to be distant. You need to be rooted. The second boundary lives in emotional labor. You listen to her stress, her doubts, her storms, and that's good. But the moment you become her therapist, her emotional sponge, her silent absorber of chaos, something shifts. She stops feeling polarity. She stops feeling tension. She stops feeling spark. Women don't fall in love with men who dissolve into their emotions. They fall for men who can stand steady in them. Presence, not absorption. Strength, not suppression. Then there's the boundary around disrespect disguised as jokes. The little digs, the eye rolls, the teasing that leaves a bruise instead of a smile. If you laugh it off every time, you're teaching her where the line is and that the line keeps moving. Silence isn't maturity here. Silence is permission. A calm, grounded response, a pause, a look that says, that doesn't land with me. That's power. Not anger, not defensiveness, clarity. Another boundary most men avoid is around effort imbalance. If you're always initiating, always planning, always fixing, she doesn't feel cherished. She feels chased. And chasing kills mystery. It removes her need to invest. And investment is what creates attachment. You're not testing her. You're allowing space for her to choose you. And finally, the most uncomfortable boundary of all, your standards. What you tolerate becomes your identity in her eyes. If you accept half-truths, inconsistency, or emotional breadcrumbs, she doesn't think less of herself. She thinks less of you. Not because she's cruel, but because psychology is honest. Attraction grows where respect lives, and respect only exists where boundaries are clear. This isn't about controlling her. It's about anchoring yourself, because the man who knows where he stands never gets walked on. Here's what no one tells you. Boundaries don't push the right woman away. They filter, they reveal, they expose who is drawn to your strength and who is only comfortable with your compliance. And this is where things get uncomfortable, because once you start holding your ground, she will test it. Not maliciously, not consciously, almost instinctively. She'll pull back slightly. She'll delay a reply. She'll question your decision with a soft tone and sharp timing. And in that moment, most men panic. They chase reassurance like oxygen. But a man with boundaries doesn't rush to fill silence. He understands something primal. Silence is not rejection. It's information. One of the most powerful boundaries you can set is around your reactions. If every shift in her mood shakes you, she learns she controls the weather of your inner world. And once someone controls how you feel, attraction quietly dies. Stability is seductive. Emotional self-regulation is magnetic. You don't need to explain yourself every time she's uncertain. You don't need to convince her of your worth. Your calm is the message. Then there's the boundary around conflict. Arguments aren't dangerous. Avoidance is. If you constantly soften your truth to keep peace, resentment starts leaking into your tone, your posture, your energy. She senses it before you say a word. A grounded man doesn't explode, and he doesn't disappear. He speaks clearly, slowly, without emotional begging. He doesn't say, I'm sorry you feel that way to escape tension. He says, here's where I stand, and lets the discomfort breathe. That kind of presence does something powerful to her nervous system. It creates trust, not because you agree, but because you're predictable. And predictability, when paired with strength, creates safety. And safety is where desire deepens instead of fades. Another boundary most men never set is around sexual pacing. Rushing intimacy doesn't make you more attractive, it makes you forgettable. When you let tension build, when you don't collapse into validation-seeking touch, she starts feeling you when you're not there. That's when desire becomes internal. That's when she invests emotionally, not just physically. You're not withholding, you're leading. And here's the shadow truth. Some women are used to men who overgive, who bend, who explain, who chase. When you don't, it unsettles them. Not because you're wrong, but because you're different. That discomfort can look like distance at first. Let it. Because the woman meant to walk beside you doesn't fear your boundaries. She leans into them. And finally, the boundary that ties everything together: self-abandonment. The moment you stop doing the things that make you you, the gym, the ambition, the solitude, the mission, she doesn't feel closer. She feels like she's standing next to a man who's shrinking. Nothing erodes attraction faster than a man who disappears into a relationship. You were whole before her. You stay whole with her. That's the frame. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors with rules. And the right woman doesn't try to break in, she knocks differently. If you've ever felt walked on, overlooked, taken for granted, it wasn't because you lacked value. It's because you never made the value visible. And once you do, everything changes. There's a quiet shift that happens when you finally stop negotiating your worth. Not a loud moment, not a dramatic confrontation, just a calm internal decision where you say, this is where I stand, and you refuse to step back from it. And here's the paradox most men never understand. The moment you stop trying to be chosen, you become choice itself. When a woman senses that you're no longer bending for approval, she feels it in her body before she understands it in her mind. Your voice slows, your movements settle, your energy stops asking and starts deciding. That's when she looks at you differently. Not because you changed who you are, but because you finally stopped apologizing for it. This is why boundaries feel threatening to people who benefited from your lack of them. They don't lose you. They lose access to the version of you that overgave. And if she pulls away when you stand firm, that's not failure. That's information. Because the right woman doesn't test your limits to control you. She tests them to see if you have any. A man without boundaries feels unpredictable in the worst way. He might resent, explode, or collapse later. A man with boundaries feels grounded, reliable, safe, but not boring. And that's the balance attraction lives in: safety without submission, confidence without cruelty, presence without pressure. When you say no without guilt, when you pause instead of react, when you choose self-respect over short-term comfort, you don't just change how women treat you, you change how you treat yourself. And once that happens, you're no longer afraid of being walked away from, because you know you'll never walk away from yourself again. This is the code most men were never taught. But now you see it. If this resonated, let it sink in. And when you're ready, rewatch it slowly. These aren't tips, they're shifts. Subscribe to Female Code Unlocked for deeper truths about attraction, psychology, and power dynamics most people are too afraid to talk about. Because once you understand the code, you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't explain, you stand, and the right energy meets you there.